Boards, games, board games. We might be talking about board games, deck building, board games, but I'm not gonna shout whether it's deck or bag or dice building. There's some things you need to be adding because you need to add little parts to build it up. That's the key, that's the heart. But what parts will be available to you? That's something that today I'll think through. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. 10 a.m. ish UK time. Time for Basic Beats and Board Game Leather, episode 814. Deck, bag, dice building. Are there other types of building? I guess hand building is kind of a thing where rather than it being a deck and then you shuffle that up and then you only get part of your deck as your hand each turn, you're building up your entire hand. That's a thing like Concordia. I mean, that's definitely a building game of sorts. And there's lots of similar considerations. You want to have in any game some strategy, you want to have some, well, any game's a big, yeah, like, is there really strategy in Twin It or Jungle Speed or a game about quickly matching words to pictures, but never words to words or pictures to pictures? Yeah, some games are just performative, and conversely, some games are just creative. Like role-playing games or Rory Story Cubes or whatever. Anyway, the point is that with a lot of games, I'm not going to say all games, but with most games, you want some strategy, you want some idea to feel the agency of, okay, I've decided I'm going to do this. And we'll see if that works. I don't know, because at the end I get a score, and then we see, given everything that happened, whether it was a good strategy or not. The other thing you might want is a bit of variability, a bit of excitement, a bit of, hey, I don't know exactly how this is going to end. Frankly, if I were to play rock, papers, well, if I were to play rock, paper, scissors, then I know there's 9 possible ways that can turn out. And frankly, yeah, a lot of those ways feel very similar, so there's only 3 functional ways that it can be like, me playing scissors and my opponent playing scissors doesn't feel that different to me playing rock to and them playing rock, although obviously, 5 ties in a row does get a wee bit different, but, like, tic-tac-toe, that's probably a better example. There's 0 variability. I do a thing, you do a thing. I know exactly how that's going to end. It's going to end in a tie, unless you're terrible, or unless, I'm brain dead on that day for some reason, and, you know, that would be really incredibly brain dead. I don't know what would be happening there. But the point is, you want the excitement. You don't want to know what exactly will happen. You want to have meaningful differences. It's not just, okay, this is going to tie. How is it going to tie? Or, okay, either I'm going to win against you, or but this does not feel incredibly different to this. Do you know what I mean? And you want to have the game feel different, because that's why we play games. I believe we play games because of agency and because of variability. And in a strategic game, that agency is expressed through having a strategy, through having reliable cards, through having reliable dice or chips or stuff that you can put into your bag and you say, that is what I want. I feel like I was able to make a meaningful decision in a bag build. That's what you want. And then the variability, it's not just, well, in Quacks of Quedlinburg, it is purely about what order you take the things out of your bag, and that matters massively. It's all about that push your luck. In Dominion, the variability is relatively low. It's all about the what order these things come out in, and there's a tiny tweak in there. But the variability is low, and I think for a lot of people these days, it does feel a little bit flat, myself included, even though for those who want the most strategic experience, having the entire tableau of all the cards at the start is massive in enabling you to pick your direction at the start and go down that direction. But then you've got Star Realms. So Star Realms, I believe, has 11 or 12 cards from each faction, like 20 cards of each faction. So it's kind of, but it's completely randomized. Well, it's partially randomized market, but with one card that, hey, this is a card you might always want. And that definitely adds a lot of excitement. It's like, hey, there's only going to be one, maybe two of these cards. So if I want it, I should buy it now. And that adds the tension, that adds an excitement. And I guess that's what I'm going to talk about. First of all, let's talk about recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. Hello, Elaine. I'm talking about bag builders and stuff, and inspired by my recent game, and I thought I'd examine a small part of it. What's some of your recent highlights? My recent highlights. Yesterday I had a quick chat with Kathleen Mercury. It was super lovely. Um, that was definitely the highlights of the day. The other highlight that I'm willing to share, like walks around the block, that was a small thing, but at least I went out of the house. Also cooked some rice. I mean, it wasn't an elaborate meal or anything, but it felt heartier. Like, yeah, sure, it's a tin of stuff, but then adding the rice made it feel more like, hey, I've made a thing. Before it was dried rice, now it's like boiled rice with some spices in it. Cumin, salt and pepper, and paprika. Those are my spices of choice. But yeah, that was my recent highlights. Other than that, got some got some warm clothes, got some, still have a functioning toilet and a functioning roof and everything, so that's good. Yeah, is salt a spice? I believe it is. I mean, if it's not a spice, like maybe there's a distinction because it's a crystal, I guess? I mean, what would you call it? But regardless of what it is, I think salt is a brilliant thing, brilliant thing. It's a little thing which is brilliant. I think that salt, even though obviously, you can get food that is too salty, like any of these things. When I talk about boxes being brilliant thing or oxygen being brilliant thing, I wouldn't want to be surrounded by 100% oxygen. That's not good either. Like, salt, little bit brings out a flavor and it helps it seep out. Also, salt, when it is a big part of the process of making kimchi, I think that salt is a brilliant thing for making things tasty. Um, yeah, Elaine says maybe it's a mineral. Could be, could be. As always, feel free to comment, ask questions from like, follow, and yeah, that's why I do this. And if you ask any questions after the show, if you're watching this not live, then I reply to all this stuff. So also feel free to, yeah, ask a question whether you're watching live or not. Can I say taps are brilliant? You turn them and suddenly water. That is totally true. We don't normally take the time to appreciate the brilliance of the modern plumbing system. I mean, I can turn it, or actually, I've got like a wee pulley, like I just kind of pull it and then I push it back. It's actually really good because I don't know, it's just kind of easier to pull. It's in the kitchen, like I can do it with my wrist rather than using my hands. With my hands, yeah, I am very fancy, are I not? But yes, taps are brilliant, whether it's spinny taps or pulley taps or taps like I used to work somewhere and then these taps. This is like an industrial place, but like we had one washing station where it was a knee tap. So you hit the tap with your knee, and then you could wash your hands. That's specifically what it was for. So if you had greasy hands, you could hit it with your knee. Then there was another tap that was a nozzle that was basically a hose pipe, and then you just push the button, and then you could lock it in. Yeah, it's when I was cutting up dead animals. True story. The dead animals were mainly pigs and lots of fish and chickens. But anyway, that's a past life. So let's crack on with the main topic. So variability is exciting, but you also want some reliability. So how can you do that? I'd also wanted to talk a wee bit about my game. Like my game is a sort of tile based. Um, it's a tile based bag building thing, and so you've got tiles, and then I'm thinking, okay, well, before, like, some of them are single-sided, and if you put it on the blank side, that's the way to get rid of them, which hopefully you won't want to do with stuff that you've bought, because if you've bought the thing, then you shouldn't want to get rid of it. But last time I playtested, I started making all the new tiles, like, double-sided, so it was like, hey, you can teleport, but this teleport is slightly more expensive. This teleport is slightly cheaper, but the reason that that's balanced is because on the other side there's an alternative use. And so this one gives you magic, this one gives you other thing. And I think that by having double-sided things that you pull from a bag, by having dice, that can add the variability and also add, you know, a bit of reliability, can add a bit of, okay, I'm going for this strategy, I'm going to put more faces into my deck, but then the variability comes out at the end when you're actually rolling the dice. Conversely, the variability of Star Realms or Ascension or other games that are similar to that is front loaded, where the variability is what you see, and then you have to react to it. So you might call that input randomness because it starts off at the input, and then you think, okay, this is what's going on. Now, which of these are most important to me? Which of them do I not want my opponents to have? Which of them might I want to buy just to stop them from having it? Which of them is going to help me defeat my opponents? And then you think about it, and then you ponder. And ideally, like, part of it might be like, okay, every single card or every single tile that comes into this small market should be variable, should be different. But there's a few reasons why you don't want that. Firstly, cognition overload. Like, if every card is totally different, that's too much to think about. So you want some similarities. Also, you like a little bit of repetition is quite a nice thing. Secondly, you want some like reliability. So let's talk about archetypes, and I'll get to your question in just a wee moment, Elaine, if you don't mind. But by archetypes, I mean, for example, a small effect that does a particular thing. Now, let's say I've got this, let's say in my game, because why not use my own game as an example? There's, and normally there is something else going on. Like Elaine says, what mechanisms do you enjoy alongside back building or deck building or whatever? And Quack says push your luck, and Ruins of Arnak has a whole bunch of stuff, and I don't know if I have a preference right now, but I will come back to this. Happy Sunday to you too, J Fool's Guard. I'm going to make this the question of the day. Like, what's your favorite bag building or deck building or whatever games, and what would you like to see with them? Something that's not already been seen necessarily. I mean, I would like to see more real-time deck building, bag building games. I would like to see more real-time everything. I would like to see some area control real-time bag building games. I think that would be cool. Although I've already started working on I can't work on too many things. Do you know what I mean? Like if I work on too many things at a time, then that's too much. But yeah, we're calling this the question of the day. but we're going to get to it again at the end. So yes, archetypes. So my game, as an example, is a bunch of people in a dungeon smacking each other. That's basically, it's a high interaction, high aggression. I'm going to smack you, you're going to smack me, and it's literally the amount of damage you deal is the number of your victory points. That's it. So sure, I lose a few victory points if I run out of health and trigger the end of the game, but I don't necessarily lose. It's definitely not last person standing. It's just a game that rewards aggression. It's a game that's all about get in there and deal a lot of damage. That is what my game is all about. So in that game, someone could just start off and stick with what they've got and try to just smack, smack, smack. Well, hits, like over and over and just keep going. But then they might never get anything. Conversely, someone else might, I'm going to try and go the other route and try to focus on improving my abilities and take a little bit of time to chase these things and improve my abilities, and then I'm going to start hitting. And then if you are improved and have balanced it so that if you don't improve your abilities, you will basically always lose, because it's not a great game if you don't get to interact with the fun part. So trying to align the fun part with the part that's actually going to make you win. But then how do you upgrade your abilities? Well, you've got one archetype, theoretically, where you might be moving around quickly and then hitting people at range. You've got another archetype where you might be moving and then doing a lot of damage and dealing damage to everyone around you. You might have another archetype where you summon minions and then you send off your minions to all the other players and then the minions do the damage for you. And then you might have like another archetype, and I'm not exactly sure what these archetypes are. I've only played it myself twice and watched it and playtested it 3 times. One of those games I was not part of the game, so it's still early days. I'm still working out exactly what the overall structure of the game is, let alone what exactly the cards are. And yes, there is a real-time element, although I've not got into that. How did you guess? Have I told you it's real-time before? But the moving around is not real-time. Everyone's pulling stuff out of their bag. You get limited amounts of time to do that. You might only have a few seconds, and then you pull out stuff out of your bag. It's like, okay, this is my stuff. This is what I'm doing this turn. And then the person who called stop gets to execute all their actions, gets to move around, and potentially generate magic, potentially teleport, summon minions, push people around with magic, pull people towards them with magic, deal damage. I mean, not all of that is going to happen in one turn, but that's kind of the options that you might build up to doing. And okay, and so like, yeah, you're only pulling out a limited number of tiles, and so every tile you pull out, you have to quickly think, is this something I want this turn or not? Either put it down or put it back. And when you pull out a tile, which side do I want? And whenever you get damaged, you get blank tiles in your bag just to annoy you. It's like, haha, I'm dealing you damage, and now put blank tiles in your bag, you fiend. So that's the parts I'm really excited about. The putting blank tiles in people's bag, which is like, ah. Anyway, so as time goes on, I am thinking about these archetypes, and it might be that there's a ranged person who's going to try and stay in range but too far away for a close combat person to attack them. You want some movement and you want some ranged attacks. Now, you can have a teleport, which lets you go anywhere. You can have a card with lots of movement on it. You could have a card with even more movement, but it costs you magic. The other thing you could do is you could actually have a card that pushes other people away, because again, this is helping people with the archer archetype keep people at range, so they don't get close enough to hit them closely. And then you want these things to be prevalent in multiple situations. So then, in order to have an amount of variability, if I said, okay, you've got a push tile with a pull on the other side, that feels different to having a tile that says push on one side and just smack close combat on the other side. And there's a whole bunch of, and so then within, if there's a card effect that you absolutely need, then as a designer, I need to think, what's the different ways that this can be expressed in an interesting way, in a meaningfully variable way, not just, okay, this is a teleport that costs 3, and this is a teleport that's okay, it's actually not to teleport. It moves you up to 9 and it costs 4, and this moves you up to 8 and it costs 3. Like, that's not interesting. But then if you've got, okay, here's a teleport, here's something where you move other people around, here's something where maybe I put a barrier in between us, that would be interesting, because then by putting a block in between us, I'm keeping you at range. That could be another way to fit in the archetype, and of course, a small amount of movement, which isn't always going to be enough, but fits into that. So I've got like 4 ways to play within that. And then I've got the other side of the tile. So it's like, what do I match that with? Now let's look at the other side of what that archetype needs, which is, okay, you need to do long range combat. So how long a range should that be? Should it just be, okay, it's currently what I've got is 1 damage up to 3 tiles away. That feels like a good time. Maybe there's also a magic thing where you spend a bit of magic, because magic is a resource in this game. You are all magicians, of course, magic makes everything easier to explain. And then you do a whole chunk of damage to um, everyone to someone who's far away. I don't know. And then I also talked about summoning minions. And then it's about, with the minions, okay, I can summon minions near me. I could summon a minion in every card on the map, because the map's divided into these cards currently, which are 3 by 3 squares. I could do that and then spread the minions all around. Of course, if I go to minion archetype, then that's like a slight variance, and then we want cards that allow you to control the minions, but how many, how much? And you don't need everything. If, again, going back to if things are just, sure, you can have draw 1 card, draw 2 cards, draw 3 cards. This is exciting. This feels meaningful. But at a point where it goes, okay, draw 4 cards, draw 5, that's kind of boring. I mean, it feels like the most interesting things is to go like 1, well, obviously if there's a card and then you draw 1 card, and that's not that interesting, but like draw 1, draw 2, 3, and then maybe 5, and then maybe 7, and maybe 10, because there's a certain amount of granularity which is just unexciting to people, and possibly too much chaos almost. And making though by making it less granular, what I mean by granularity is, let's say I had a game and I'm saying you start at health 10 life and you go down to 0. Well, instead of saying that, I could say, okay, you start at 100 life and then you go down to 0. And then suddenly, rather than doing what was previously 1 or 2 and is now 10 or 20, I could now start saying, well, you deal 7 or 9 or 8 damage rather than 10. So there's high fidelity. But with any board game, of course, you have to track that yourself. So at what point does it just become annoying and irritating? And why the heck are you dealing with these tiny numbers that I just don't care about anymore? At what point do you just not care? That's kind of the question. And it feels like, yeah, if something's um maybe like 33%, that feels like, yeah, it's kind of on the verge of possibly not caring anymore. Like, and again, it's okay if this creature comes with 3 health points and this creature comes with 4, I guess, that could be a thing, but it almost feels like you need more than 1/3 increase or decrease to or 25% decrease to be, "Ooh, that makes a difference." I'm excited to see that. And I'm just talking out loud. I mean, this is not a this is not a rule, this is a vague rule of thumb, and just observing the fact that at a certain point, who cares? So, synergies. Sometimes there are different levels of synergies, and some cards, some tiles, some whatever's going on should synergize ideally not just with one thing, but with other things. And when I'm talking about synergies, I mean there's strong like there's a question of how good is this thing on its own? How good is it potentially with the perfect um sets of cards or tiles or whatever? And then how big is that difference? So everything, in my opinion, like by playing it with the right things, being a little bit better if you craft your deck rather does make a game more interesting. It's not just about purely what's the most powerful card or what's the most powerful tile. At a certain point, you've already decided this is what I'm going for. These are the cards I've already got in my deck, and therefore I am going to have other cards that work well with them. By having cards that synergize, by having cards that are variable in their power level compared to what you've already got, that makes the game more strategic. That adds a little bit of, um, yeah, that adds a little bit of thinking ahead of time, a little bit of strategizing. That means that you feel like your early decisions are actually rewarded. But then at the same time, you do want those cards to A, synergize with not just one, not just two, but like a whole bunch of other cards. So that if you're getting this for okay, this card, I need this kind of thing. It's not just I need this one particular card, it's this kind of thing. Then that means that even in a chaotic market, you're still more likely to get that kind of thing by it synergizing with an archetype again, rather than just synergizing with a specific card, if that makes sense. The other thing I'm going to say is that ideally there should sure be some variability in how good it is with the in the best case scenario and how good it is in the worst case scenario, but it shouldn't be like, okay, if I happen to draw the right cards at the right time or get the right cards at the right time, then this is going to be the most incredible thing that can win the game. And again, like, it's not a science. It's not like I can say this is the percentage increase in reward you should be getting. Although there's probably rules of thumb that maybe someone in the world could give you, but it's more just to say there should be rewards even if you don't get it in the exact perfect situation. Do you know what I mean? You shouldn't ever feel like this is completely worthless. I think if you were everything should ideally have some function. And that and yeah, Elaine says, yes, combos can feel really rewarding unless they're really hard to get. This is one of the things that annoyed me about Arc Nova. And this is not me putting on an Elaine voice. That's not me trying to sound like Elaine. Um, and also, I think a lot of people enjoy complex games, but not convoluted ones, especially if the reward does not outweigh the convolutions. Yes, it's about the bookkeeping. It's about why am I thinking about this? Why am I keeping track of this? Does this really bloody matter? Anyway, multifunctional stuff. So this is the key thing. So in my game, because you've got tiles and because you're placing down your tiles into a little grid, and honestly, like it might be enough that you're just placing 2 tiles a turn typically. But those 2 tiles, you need to draw them out and you'd be like, okay, this is a tile. Do I want it right now? Maybe I don't. I put it back in. I take the other one out and I don't want this side, but then I do want this side. So I put that down. And it's about the sides that you use. And by having this multifunctional stuff, then that allows cards, tiles, whatever, to be desired by multiple people. It keeps things coming out of the um, market. By being multifunctional, it increases competition, which is obviously interesting. There's a reason why I now want the same cards as you or the same tiles as you, even if we're going for totally different things. Maybe I want it for the possible effect of raising the minions, and this is a big raising minion card, and you're never going to do that because the raising, I've got all the control minion cards already, but maybe you want it for the other side, and the other side is the um, push my opponent around side, which I've got the controlling minions, and now that you've bought this tile for the push people around side, now you happen to have a raising minions. Maybe you would want to do a controlling minion thing. I don't know. But regardless, it feels like multifunctional cards having or multifunctional tiles or multifunctional chits or dice that, I mean, dice are a bit weirder because you don't actually get that choice, but having anything that's modal, essentially. I mean, sometimes you get with a card, it could literally just say, choose one, do one of these things. Sometimes that's integrated into the rules of the game. Like maybe there's creatures, and with these creatures, you can use them to defend or you can use them to attack, and you choose which way you want to go. And by having things that tie into different strategies, that is going to make the game overall better. This has been a blather. Wonder whether I should start labeling them like a blather or a conversation or whatever. I mean, most of these shows are me just talking out loud, but I feel like I've kind of clarified some thoughts in my mind. I hope it's been interesting to listen to. But let me know if you have any thoughts about, balancing that reliability and variability. I guess what I'm saying is that it is a continuum, and obviously, if you want ultimate reliability, the only way to do that is with um, a fully pre-designated market like Dominion. But there are other ways. You can have like one tile that's always there because that's the one tile that people will generally need. Or you can have, okay, this sort of effects appears on a lot more stuff. And hey, here's a bunch of different ways of doing a similar thing. I want to keep people away. I mean, I just thought of it during this conversation. I want to make little blocks that I can shoot over, because that makes sense. If the blocks are like 1.5 1 meter 20 tall, then you can look over them, you can shoot over them, but you can't walk through them. You can't climb them. That's what I'm going to say. You can't climb them. Or maybe it should be like spikes. That makes sense because you can't walk onto spikes, but you can yeah, that would make lots of sense. And then you can just generate spikes around you. But you shouldn't be allowed to, yeah, get rid of everything. That would be obviously ridiculous because then you've safeguarded yourself. But that's a way to do it. Movement's a way to do it. Pushing people's a way to do it. And yeah, giant turnips, that could be a way to do it, sure. Um, J Guard says currently playing Gloomhaven, the whole fun is the action system. Always having to carefully choose your cards, trying to take into account what you want to use later in the game because, yeah, in that one use this part of this card and this part of a different card, and it's like by having cards that do different things, but it's not free choice. It's like, hey, that's a puzzle turn to turn as well. So it's like I'm buying this for multiple effects, but you have to kind of want both of the effects ideally. I don't know. But you could equally buy it just because one of the effects is really the one you always want. Um, at this point, I will say we're wrapping up with the question of the day. Question of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way. So, my question of the day is, what would you like to see alongside your bag building or deck building or whatever? Um, I'd like to see worker placement. Yeah, I'd like to ponder like how that would work, and part of me would like to make that game. I mean, I guess you have to take out your own tiles, or maybe the stuff that you take out allows you to move your people onto places. Um, yeah, I mean, there's already a lot of variability on where people go. I mean, Rings of Ornak, I guess, is sort of that. But I'm thinking rather than a worker placement to power the deck building, I mean a bag building or deck building to power the worker placement, if that makes sense. So you take stuff and then maybe you get more workers and maybe, but then what do the workers do? Because worker placements is just a way of choosing actions, which is the same as bag building. So maybe that's redundant. Maybe that's a bit too much. Um, I'm going to change my answer now. I am set collection. Yeah, because at least set collection's a goal. So that works well. Like you've got the how and then you've got the why. Yeah. Tautology, the board game. Hmm. Yeah, I mean you can have multiple hows and how do you do it, or you do this and you do that, but I think it's you want at least one Y as well. So yeah, let me go with set collection. I mean, again, there's already a lot of things that are just here's set collection. Um, Maybe you're trying to make a balanced deck. Oh, what if? Okay, here's the thing. Um, what if you are playing rounds, and so you have one round where you've made your bag, and then you're scoring based on how diverse everything is, and then you play another short game starting with the same deck, and then now you're shedding stuff and then building stuff. So you're trying to shift your deck, and now you're trying to make it the most um homogenized thing. So like first you start trying to have all the colors, then you start trying to have just one color, then maybe you try to have all the colors in just one color. That would be interesting. Jay Foolsguard says, I think I would like to place the thing I drew out of the bag somewhere and have that impact on the game. I mean that, but then if you place it on a central map, and then if it goes out of the bag, it's not really a bag building game, I don't think, because I think the recurring nature of keeping this thing going, cycling through your bag, or cycling through your hands, or cycling through your deck is part of the um it's part of the essence. So taking it out, I mean, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm just saying that some people might argue that it's not really a bag building thing if you're taking those tiles that you've taken out of your bag and putting them onto a central map. But that is an interesting idea. Um, but yeah, talking. I assume Elaine was talking about my game when Elaine said, "Sounds like an interesting game. I hope playtesting and development goes well." Thank you very much. I'm hoping that I might see my friend today, but they've not messaged me since I messaged them yesterday. I hope they're generally okay. I hope nothing serious has happened to them. I'm sure they're fine. They're probably just, yeah, maybe they're being rubbish at communicating and then they'll still surprise me and come over this afternoon. Um, but regardless, um, ooh, This is interesting, but then if you put it on a central board, how do you know who made it? I guess if you have, oh, that's interesting. So maybe you've got little cubes, that's are your colors. So you take tiles out of the bag, you put them into the center. Obviously, you have tiles on these to show ownership, and then you control these things, and then you put all those tiles back into the bag. Huh. Maybe you score those tiles, and then the person with the fewest points gets to steal some of other people's tiles. So maybe it's less of a bag building and more of a bag, like, rather than you kind of shift around what stuff there is. That could be interesting. I don't know. Or maybe, oh, I've got it. I've got it. Okay. Central map, tile, central, like city building. Okay, this is a tile building, tile placement, bag building, city building game. Okay, the way it works is everyone starts with the same stuff, and then you've got some random tiles, you put them out, and then you put them onto the board, and this is both the market and also how you will score. So you put down these tiles, and then you one at a time, take a tile out, put it on the map, take a tile out, put it on the map, and then you score for these. There's a scoring track, and it's like, hey, this thing scores for similar adjacent stuff, this thing scores for that, blah, blah, blah. And then you've scored, and then afterwards, everyone drafts from all the stuff that was already on the map, and then you have a second round, maybe with new stuff, and then maybe a third, maybe a fourth round. I don't know. It feels like it could work. It feels like the start of something. Maybe it's not on a, and like maybe rather than on a map, it's kind of like, hmm, on a river? No, that doesn't quite work. Yeah, like what if starting them out, you place them on a zigzag tile shape. So it's kind of like Carcassonne, but yeah, that could work. Like it's kind of like Carcassonne. Um, and then you're placing these tiles, boop, 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 and then that determines the diagonal distance of the board. I think that could definitely work. I mean, well, the first time you make a game, I mean, I think that definitely the idea of being able to read rules or being able to ponder ideas and think about how it would work is a skill that you can develop as you spend more time making games. But also I think that to some extent, like especially when like if you've got a cool idea, I don't know, oh, what would this be like? Just trying it out. You are a game designer. I would say that if I were to be the arbiter of what is game design and what is not, if you're if you've made a game and then you've pondered it or play tested it and then you've made changes, that's the making changes, the iteration, that is what game design is to me. And so it's like trying it out. But yeah, this is interesting. Like for sure, that's actually quite interesting. So do you think that's a game that you will make, J Fool's Guard? Because that sounds interesting. And what was the one that I said again? I can't set collection. Yeah, alternating between the two things. You could even do that with a whole bunch of other games. Yes, exactly. Playtesting is super important. For now, over to you. What are you up to? You can share button if you want to. So I am hopefully, if I don't do it tonight, by tomorrow morning, then I'm going to give up on it. But I'm hoping to do a bunch of character illustrations and a bunch of writing today. I'm also hoping to have a friend over, but yeah, we'll see how things go. I'm also going to make sure I get outside of the house at some point, even though it's looking horrible. But recap and wrap up before we finish up. To recap and wrap up, um, Bag building is cool. It allows you to feel a sense of control, and it allows you to feel a sense of ownership of what you're doing. And variability and reliability are almost at odds, but you can try to make sure that you have both things, that you have that excitement of variability and still allow the agency of, I'm going to make my decisions and I've got the opportunity to make my decisions, because you want to feel at the end like it wasn't just that you were buffeted around by the winds of fate, but you were also partially in control of it. At least you had your sail and you got some control over which direction you went in, somewhat. We talked about taps being brilliant. Taps are so brilliant. And yeah, something else. Oh yeah, salt. Salt is brilliant. I talked about making rice. Yeah, making rice. That's a nice, easy way. Rice is brilliant. Man, there's lots of brilliant things in the world. I might make some rice. And I talked about how you can make sure that there's reliability even within the excitement of a random market, talking about thinking about archetypes, making sure there's multiple things so that any given archetype can have different options, making sure that there are synergies going on to reward not just picking the best card but also the best deck overall, but then making sure that synergies don't overpower the game. It's yes, combos can give you a boost, but cards can be useful regardless. And then by having multifunctional stuff, that means that a given card can work in multiple archetypes. By multifunctional stuff, it can mean that a card can combo brilliantly, but it can still have a good function anyway. And that multifunction can be literally a tile that flips and has two sides. It might be a card that says choose one of these, or it might be something which is an opportunity cost, like something that says push one, move one thing, one space, and that one thing maybe it allows you to do, or maybe it says like move one enemy two spaces, and that's multifunctional in that it can allow you, if you are the close quarters build where you're doing bonus damage, you're doing big damage, but you need everyone to be right beside you, then that means that you're able to pull them with that card. But if you're the archer, you're able to push them away and keep them at bay. And if you're, and so all, so I guess there's the kind of running, teleporting to the, then in my game, I've got to think, okay, there's the archetype of strategy of going off and running and powering up, because there's probably going to be items that appear and then you run off and then you grab the thing, and that also matches with the long distance build, and is that overpowered? And then the long distance build also matches with the keep them at bay, use my minions build. So then how do I make the close combat build, have be a viable strategy? But that's all down the line. I'll keep talking about that. I'm sure I'll learn stuff and I will try to teach you along with me. And we came up with so many cool ideas with the question of the day of yeah, its rating and yeah, city building, tile placement game. That sounds really cool. And what people are up to, Elaine is organizing sending out several hundred envelopes. When you say organizing sending out several hundred envelopes, do you mean you are actually putting things into the envelopes and sealing them yourself? That sounds is that for like Patreon or backers or something like that? I hope that goes well, and I hope that people really enjoy what they're getting. I hope it goes brilliantly. And I hope you have a lovely day as well. As you can see at the bottom, I am Stuff by Bez everywhere. Stuffbybez.com/streams should tell you what my future streams are about, although I noticed that it's taking a tiny bit of time to update. So tomorrow I am meeting. Oh, I'm getting to meet Anita Landgraf, owner of White Castle Games. I should definitely put that in the calendar. And on Tuesday, we're talking about what a game agent does, featuring Anita Landgraf, the owner of White Castle Games. So Monday will be like just talking to them about everything, and Tuesday will be about what they actually do. Wednesday, I'll be with Alan Paul talking about the next mechanism as we go through all the mechanisms. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday will be about a gamer's gaming getaway. And then, yeah, that's the week ahead. So, and I've got a new friend with Lo Hua Shang, or Shang Lo Hua, I think is the correct way to put the surname at the start. The family name at the start, I guess I should say. But yes, share, spread the word. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope it continues to be interesting. And Elaine says, yes, we are, but we need to know the stamps and the addresses. And yes, it's for Patreon. And also, Royal Mail don't like it if you put 700 envelopes in the same letterbox at once. Because it fills it up. And what I would do, I mean, I'm assuming you do click and collect, because if you do click and collect, that. Oh no, wait. I'm thinking that maybe click and collect stops being cheaper at a certain price. So if it's literally small envelopes rather than large envelopes, it might be the same with a stamp. So it might actually be equally good to just write them on. But yes, I hope it goes well. That sounds like a lot of writing. Lots of love. I hope you have a wonderful time. And yes, I have a Patreon, but I need to sort that out because yeah, that was for a thing that I said I would do, and then I didn't, and now I'm sad. Lots of love, and for now, bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Do do do. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Do do do. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 da, bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, bye. Bye, bye. Bye, bye, J Fool's Card. Bye, bye, Elaine. Bye, bye, everyone.